Okay. Thanks very much. That was a very nice view of your actually while you were introducing me. So nice. First of all, I'm actually sorry I can't be with you. This is one of these situations where you'd rather have your atoms there than your bits. Attending the conference, and I have a good excuse. I'm at DTapscott, at DTapscott. I'm there, I don't know if you heard it, so I had a little bad luck 9 days ago. I was golfing with my son, Alex, who's a young adult, he's 24. And we were at a beautiful course on the lake where we have our country property. It's called Big One Island. And we were on the signature 6 hole. We had the course to ourselves because it was a rainy day, but we were determined to golf. And at the top, the 6th hole has a hill that drops about 150, 160 feet. And that's a long way down. If you think Niagara Falls is 195 feet. And we ventured our cart out to the top of the hill to retrieve a ball and started sliding down the hill sideways. And then we started going forward, and then we started going backwards, and then we started doing donuts. And we started gaining speed as we went down the hill. And we were talking all the way down, trying to keep calm. Okay, if it rolls, here's what to do. Don't break now. And then it occurred to me, we're headed for the woods. We're going to have to bail now. And we were probably going 20 or 25 or 30 miles an hour when we bailed. And the cart, so we both rolled along, and the cart went flying into the trees. It hit with such force that it ripped our golf clubs off the back of the cart, off the metal holders that were clubs. And we were both lying on the ground. So we made our way to, in a boat to where our car was, got to the local hospital. And it turns out I have a broken clavicle and a couple of, at least a couple of ribs that are fractured. And Alex is a rugby player. He's a tough boy. But I'll tell you, it was pretty terrifying at the time. But if I had a movie, it'd Monte Python kind of situation. This golf cart careening down this hill with these 2 people trying to figure out what to do. It could have been a lot worse. We made the right call bailing of the cart. I'm not sure I'd be doing this conference at all today. So I said bad luck, and the whole thing made me think a bit about luck. And so I thought I'd maybe talk a little bit about luck today. Stephen Leacock, who was actually born in the same town I was, the great humorist, said, "I'm a great believer in luck, and I find that the more of it the harder I work, the more of it I have." And I've had some bad luck in my life, but overall, in balance, I'd say Lady Luck has been good to me. And I just wanted to tell a story about that, because somebody asked me recently at a conference. I hadn't ever told this story, and I didn't really get a chance to tell it at the conference about how I ended up in this whole sort of digital world. But I had been living in Edmonton, Alberta. I was doing a master's, and I fell in love with this fabulous woman, but we had a little problem, which I won't go into. And I decided the honorable thing to do was to leave town. So no job. One of my brothers was a headhunter. And he says, there's this really cool job at Bell Northern Research, which is Canada's Bell Labs. And it's called the Office of the Future job. And I said, well, Office of the Future, what is that? He says, I don't know. And I thought about it, and I said, perfect. I mean, no one can ever prove you're wrong because it's all in the future. So I went in and I learned, I faked my way through the first interview. And it was something to do with multifunction workstations, computers being connected to networks and being used by managers and professionals. So I wrote some more, and I got to the second interview and through the third interview, and they said, it's looking really good. We just want you to do one more interview, and we'd like an engineer. And I was a psychologist. I said, systems engineer, why do you want me to meet a systems engineer? And they said, well, we just want to know what you know about the Unix operating system and system development methodologies and object-oriented computing, which we're very into here, and so on. And I thought, well, this is not going to be good. So I walked in. Before I could sit down, there was this tall guy standing there. He had a jean shirt on, wearing sandals, this wild genius in his eyes. I thought, oh man, this guy's going to take me apart in about 30 seconds. And before I could sit down, he looks at me. He says, "Don Tapscott, did you go to Camp Wasabin in 1960?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." He says, "David Tilbrook, cabin 2." So, not to be further communicated, but the reason that I'm in this whole digital age is because of a guy named David Tilbrook in cabin 2, who turns out is a Unix genius, one of the key people behind Unix, and who didn't give a shit what I knew about system development methodology. So there you go. So it was a dream job. And I was told to figure out how this thing called the ARPANET and multifunction workstations connected to it were going to change the nature of work. And I could travel anywhere. I had a budget I wanted. And so I traveled all around the world. This was in 1978. And I met everybody who knew anything about this. And I discovered a guy at Stanford Research Institute named Douglas Engelbart. And he, in 1963, had written a paper called Augmenting Human Intellect, a conceptual framework, where he pretty much laid out this whole thing. And by the time I met him in 78, he had this thing called an augmented knowledge workshop, where he invented the mouse, he invented word processing, he invented hyperlinks, and he had all these people working together using the kinds of capabilities that we use today. And he spent a lot of time with me, he became my mentor. And so at BNR, we did it. In 1979, we implemented 50 workstations for a test group and 50 people in a control group that just had secretaries, telephones, and physical calendars and diaries and stuff like that. And the people using the system, we built this on Unix. It was pretty much what you get in Microsoft today, 100. And it turns out that the group that was using the technology worked very differently. They performed better, they innovated better, and they were much more into their work, they were more loyal, and I decided, you know what, this stuff is going to change the world. So I wrote a book about it in 1981 on how essentially computers would be used by professionals and managers. And the ARPANET and these vast network of networks was going to be a huge thing. And nobody read the book. In fact, my mother bought most of the copies. It was like a study in bad timing. And you know what the big issue was? People said, "Tapscott, you're full of crap. This will never happen." You know why they said this will never happen? Because managers will never learn to type. My entire life was reduced. All these profundities were reduced to the issue of typing proficiency. I became a typing evangelist, going. So that book, nobody read that book. And then I wrote another book about how to plan for the use of network workstations in 1985, and nobody read that book. And finally, a 90-book book that somebody, it was called Paradigm Shift. And we kind of laid out this view that we're in this right down industrial age to a networked age and a knowledge age. And that was a bestseller, as you know. Good luck on the next book. It was called The Digital Economy, and it was the first big book about the internet in 95, and it was a bestseller. Then after that, I wrote a book about privacy called Who Knows? Safeguarding Your Privacy in a Network World. Nobody bought that book. Now, Mom came through again for that book. Everyone. everyone said to me, privacy? Huh? What's the big issue? And so that was kind of bad timing. And then finally, I started noticing how my own kids were, as little children, were effortlessly able to use all this sophisticated technology. And at first I thought, my children are prodigies. And but then I noticed that all their friends were like them. This was a bad theory. So I started working with these 300 kids, and I wrote a book called Growing Up Digital in '97, defined the net generation, the digital divide, and a whole bunch of the concepts that have become the vernacular today. And then I wrote another stinker. It was called Digital Capital. This was in bad luck. It was bad timing. This is a book I'm very proud of. You know, Business Week reviewed Digital Capital, and it's the best review of a book I've ever seen, the most positive review. They said this book is pure enlightenment. Trouble was, the book came out the month NASDAQ crashed. So there you go. Mom came through again. And then finally, and then I wrote a corporation in 2000 that argued that we need transparency as a new force to change all of our institutions. If we don't, really bad things will happen, like the whole financial services industry could collapse. And that was not very good timing either. And then, as you know, Wikinomics was the best-selling management book of the year. And digital, I talked to you guys last year about this, and that was a lot of fun. And now let me end with a few thoughts about my latest book, Macrowikinomics. This is my life's work, and I'm convinced that this is finally happening, that the industrial economy has finally run out of gas, and that the internet has finally come of age. And if you look around, we have a whole series of institutions that are stalled and that need more than some tweaking or business process improvement or whatever. We need to reinvent them around a whole new networked model and around a whole new set of principles that embrace collaboration, openness, sharing of intellectual property, interdependence, and integrity. And you know what? This happened once before. And don't go back to 1982 or something like that. It happened a few hundred years ago when, under agrarian feudal society, concentrated in a tiny oligopoly, or oligopoly. And what happened was that with the printing press, knowledge became more broadly distributed. And all of a sudden, a bunch of institutions appeared to be stalled. It didn't make sense for, say, the church to be doing medicine. It didn't make sense for a bunch of kings and nobles to be running everything in society. So we had the rise of parliamentary democracy. Martin Luther called the printing press God's greatest act of grace. We saw the creation of the modern university, the corporation, industrial capitalism, and economy. And industrial capitalism was a good system. It advanced humanity from the previous. But now if you look around, I mean, in macroeconomics, we talk about 15 institutions. I don't have time to go through them today, but newspapers are collapsing. We're all on this New York Times death watch. How much longer can it service its debt? The music industry that brought you Elvis and the Beatles is now collapsing. It's suing children. The number, you know, you'll read in macroeconomics, we found this from an industry insider, the number 3 source of revenue for the US record labels is suing people who love their product. It's so sad, you know? We've got universities. You know, the smartest kids in the United States don't go to lectures. The cream of the crop of an entire generation is boycotting the formal model of pedagogy. The big thing is to get an A without having ever gone to the lecture. We've got the old industrial age model of the corporation that's failing. Models of government. Our systems for global problem solving can't solve global problems. The nation state that came out of this transition from agrarian feudal society to industrial capitalism, I mean, Italy wasn't a nation state till 150 years ago. that state is the wrong size for a global economy. Our healthcare systems are failing miserably. And the solution is not just to throw more and more money at healthcare. We need to move towards collaborative healthcare. So we need to rethink and to rebuild many of the institutions that have served us well for decades or even centuries. And the pillars of economic and social life that grew from the industrial economy have really come to the end of their life cycle. Now, the good news is, against every one of these stalled institutions in atrophy or failure, there are 15 of them, we've got these sparkling new initiatives of how people are participating, reorganize how we do things, how we orchestrate capability, how we create public value, how we take care of ourselves, how we entertain ourselves, and how we solve problems. But they're doing it around a completely new modus operandi. And this is such an exciting time in human history. So let me close just with getting back to the luck. This idea that we're moving from an industrial age to an age of networked intelligence is not a new idea. I mean, I've been talking about this for 30 years, and have others. Alvin Toffler wrote a book roughly 30 years ago called The Third Wave. But you know what? I think these ideas were ideas in waiting. They were waiting for the new web. They were waiting for a new generation of digital natives for whom all of this is like the air. They were waiting for the social revolution of social networking, 500 million people now communicating on Facebook and growing rapidly every day. And they were waiting for a new mode of production. Social networking is becoming social production. There's a new mode of production, in the making. And finally, they were waiting for a convulsive shock to the system. That's what this crisis is. This is a turning point in human history. And we are moving into a new age of where human intelligence can be networked. You know, luck. I'm feeling lucky about macroeconomics having an impact. And I'm feeling lucky because I think that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. I've been preparing for this time personally for 30 years. And the opportunity finally exists for all of us to reinvent, essentially, civilization and all of its institutions. And I'm hoping each of you are feeling lucky about this transformation because the stakes for our children and for this little planet are very high. So I look forward to collaborating with you online. I'm sorry I can't be there. Have a lot of fun, but I've got to go take a codeine pill.